Hey guys, should your business invest in AI brain? I decided to make this video because I have many meetings with business owners every single week, and I noticed a trend recently where many of those business owners describe what could be like an AI brain for their business. And yeah, I want to talk about this. I think this should be interesting for many business owners out there. So yeah, let's go through the outline quickly. So first I will talk about the hype, about this trend, and then what is actually behind an AI brain for businesses. And then I will talk about when does it make sense versus when it is probably a waste of money, and then how to compute the cost of information retrieval. I will also tell you how to compute the ROI, for such system, whether it makes sense or not, right? And finally, if you are interested and want to know more, I also dedicated a little part about a roadmap for a successful RAG project. So yeah, as I've told you, I have multiple meetings with business owners, and the last one I had, there was a business owner who was telling me, hey, I want my company to have a brain. I want this brain, to have access to all of our data across all platforms, in the Google Drive, our documents, in our PDFs, in our CRM, so that when an agent asks a question about something to this brain, then he can know exactly what to write to a lead, Also, when he started describing the system, he knew what he wanted, but I was like, okay, this guy is definitely excited about this, there is excitement, but in my head, I was like, I don't know if it is worth it for a business, right? So I decided to also compare, to go on Google Trends. And here, I compared multiple terms. The first one is RAG, and I will tell you more about this. So this is basically the type of systems that we talk about when we say AI brains, but I will tell you more about that. And then I compare that with the artificial intelligence search term, and then another tool which is called N8N, which was hyped up a lot lately, which is like a no-code tool that helps people that are not very technical to glue together multiple tools, and it helps in terms of automation and so on. We can see that this term, the RAG, the AI brain of businesses, is searched a lot in a consistent way, and basically this was for the US the past 12 months for the web search. We can see that, as I told you, the RAG system is searched a lot. However, for AI, it is searched a little bit less, but we have some peaks. For example, I'm pretty sure this correlates with the new releases of new big AI models like GPT-5 and so on. And for this niche tool, N8N, we can see that here, almost no interest. However, there was a hype here. We have an upwards trend, and then right now it is slowly fading away. But we can see that overall the search for AI brain RAG systems, it is searched a lot among businesses and builders. Okay, so as I told you, AI brain stands for RAG, and RAG actually is an acronym. It stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. So what does it mean? It's actually a way to retrieve information from custom data using large language models, for example, ChatGPT, Gemini, and so on. And if you go to YouTube and you just write those three letters, RAG, RAG, you will end up with a lot of useful videos. For example, this one from IBM, it lasts only a little bit more than 6 minutes, or this one from Code Cloud, and they explain very well in simple terms what is RAG about. And basically, it's a way to overcome the limitations of LLMs. And why do we say limitations? It's because, ChatGPT, it was trained on a lot of data, but it is mainly publicly accessible data, data from the internet. But the thing is that many data sets are, proprietary. Companies possess those data sets from customers, internal procedures, processes, and so on. And the AI cannot know anything about this data. So a stat about this is that 60 to 65% of the world's data is owned by companies. So this was a stat from IDC Global Datasphere report in 2023, which means that you need a clever way to get insights from this massive amount of data. And you need to do that using natural language. And you could ask either easy questions or more complex questions. For example, an easy question could be, last year, what was our cost of goods sold? So imagine you are an e-commerce brand and this AI has access to your accounting data from all of the past years, and you want to know this information because it is important for your current year, for example. Another complex question could be, during our demo meetings last quarter, what were the top 3 objections mentioned by our leads? So let's say you are a SaaS company and basically you are hiring new salespeople and you want to train them to answer effectively to objections, and basically this AI would have access to the data, to the meetings data, the audio recordings, the conversations, the transcripts, and so on. And basically, this will be super useful for them basically. And you need to know that the user interface usually looks very simple, just like a chatbot, just like ChatGPT. However, it is much more and much advanced than a simple chatbot. You could call those systems conversational expert agents. And what goes behind the scenes could be extremely complex in order to fetch the right information, but most importantly, to answer it in an accurate and relevant way. Okay, so now let's move on to when does it make sense, to go ahead with those kind of systems. For me, those type of systems are very well suited for knowledge-heavy businesses. When employees need to spend a lot of time retrieving specific information. For example, you have a lot of manuals, lots of PDFs, SOPs, so standard operating procedures. You also need to go through case studies, research papers, or even reports. And you need to sift through all this massive amount of data. And in this case, it would make sense. For example, engineering firms or consulting firms, or even large IT service providers. Another example is customer support at scale. Many times you have repetitive questions that will be answered by the same answers every single time, So we want predictable input that will output something also predictable. So basically, those RAG systems could be trained to answer FAQs or troubleshooting guides and so on. And companies like Hostinger could benefit a lot from these systems. And I know for a fact that Hostinger already implemented this RAG system because earlier, I would say, like a month ago, I had a quite complex issue and I started exchanging emails with their customer support, and I knew that I was actually sending emails to an AI. And after exchanging like 19 emails, I wrote to the AI, hey, please just transfer this conversation to a human because I know that my case is much more complex and I know that you cannot figure it out on your own, but still, even though the AI was not able to fix my issue, it's much better to first filter out all the people that could be that could have like a simple answer for their question before transferring some complex issues to real humans. Some large SaaS businesses could also, benefit from the system because you would have customers that will ask you questions like, hey, how do I configure my account? How can I do this action? And so on and so forth. You also have the typical example that we always give for RAG systems, e-commerce brands, because you need to answer always questions related to the customer support. Where is my item? Will you be doing a promotion during Oktoberfest? And so on and so forth. You also have companies that need to manage internal knowledge. So for example, you have multiple modalities of data. When we say multiple modalities, we mean multiple types of data. For example, audio is a modality, text is another modality, and so on. So you have those multiple types of data that are scattered across multiple platforms. So for example, you could have audios of meetings in Microsoft Azure. You could have messy PDFs on Google Drive. You could have your large MySQL database with a lot of products and so on. And you could, on top of that, have like a large code base with its documentation. So we need to aggregate all of this data. The AI needs to know all of it so that we can extract insights and ask questions about this data, And examples of companies that could, benefit from this is enterprise tech companies or even government agencies. For example, NASA, they have like a huge amount of data, but they could use RAG system to aggregate all of this data to start asking questions about it. You also have regulated and high-stakes industries where precision is critical. You can't misquote a regulation. Those complex retrievals are called multi-hop. So it means that, we have information that is linked to multiple pieces of information. So for example, let's say you are dealing with a law case, and this case refers to like a specific law, and this law is referred to another case study, and so on and so forth. So you can see that there is like a link between multiple pieces of data, and the AI needs to know about this relationship between all this data so that it can answer, a question in a very reliable way. Another thing is that those industries have many acronyms that are hyper-specific, and many times you have two similar acronyms that could mean two different things, depending on the context. And obviously, those type of industries could be banks, clinics, law firms, and so on. And as a business owner, another thing that you need to know is that not every company that could use RAG should use RAG. And you should just simply use the equation frequency times volume. And essentially, we are answering two questions. The first one is, how many times per day does an employee need to retrieve specific information? And the second one is, how many employees need to do that? So let's go through multiple examples. The first one is where the frequency is high, but the volume is low. So let's say it's a law firm that employs one attorney and one secretary. So every single day, the secretary fetches information in a very frequent way. What I say here is that it's probably not worth it, to build a RAG system. Our second example is where the frequency is low, but the volume is high. It's a real estate company that has 80 realtors. Each agent reviews a specific script, but they do it once per month. And also here, I say that it's probably not worth it. Finally, let's view a case where both the frequency and the volume are high. Let's say it's an insurance agency that has 50 agents, and every day, every single agent needs information about coverage, policies, regulations, and so on. So what I say here, it's probably worth it to implement a RAG system. So why do I always say probably? Because at the end of the day, the actual cost needs to be quantified. So now let's move on to when it is probably a waste of money, And here I write that for most small businesses, RAG is probably not worth it. For example, like a bakery or like a small HVAC company or a small architecture firm and so on. So as a business owner, if an AI expert pitches you a chatbot that can answer questions to the website visitors and knows everything about your services and so on, if your website gets a few visits per month, then it's probably not worth it to build a RAG. Okay, so now we move on to how to compute the cost of information retrieval for your business. So here I will take an example of a casualty insurance agency in California. They have 50 agents. Obviously, we have 20 working days per month, and every single agent works 8 hours per day. Let's assume that 25% of their time is spent finding information rather than talking to clients or processing claims, which means it's around 2 hours per day. Let's say that they have an hourly salary of $43. Then the monthly cost to retrieve information for this agency is 50 agents times 20 days times 8 hours times 25%, and then we can multiply it by $43, which is $86,000. So it costs the insurance agency $86,000 each month simply to retrieve information, which is a lot. And basically the same methodology could be applied to pretty much any company to get an idea about the current cost of information retrieval. Now we move on to an interesting part, which is the ROI. What kind of ROI can we expect from a RAG system? So yeah, using the RAG, the agents now spend only 10% of their time retrieving information. So let's say we implemented the RAG, and thanks to this system, instead of wasting some amount of time, now the RAG, saves us a lot of time. So the new monthly cost, it's basically the same formula that we used here, but instead of 25%, we only multiply by 10%, which is now $34,000, the new cost. So the RAG saves the agency every single month $51,000, which is the difference between those two here. So now the agents spend 90% of their time in revenue generating activities instead of 75% before, which means that they will spend more time selling policies, processing claims faster, cross-selling, and so on. Which means that in this case, the RAG also brings new revenue. Before, let's say the company generated $200,000 worth of new policies each month. So we need to know that going from 75% to 90%, it's like a 20% increase in productive time, which means that the new policy revenue is around $240,000 per month. Which means that the RAG system will be responsible for an extra $40,000 per month. Obviously, in real life, you know that the math never adds up exactly like that, but at least you get the idea, So in total, the system brings in $51,000 plus $40,000, which is $91,000 of value each month. So now let's say that if the system costs $100K to set up and $5K per month in terms of operating costs plus maintenance costs, so the payback period is 1.15 months, which is simply $100K divided by $86,000. Which means that after 1.15 months, it's pure return. So what you need to know is that RAG saves money, it can indirectly bring in new revenue, and if the system has a reasonable cost, it can pay for itself very quickly. So now let's talk about some roadmap for a successful RAG project. Basically, what you need to know as a business owner is asking the right questions is already half of the work being done. Some examples of questions to ask is, first of all, do you feel like you spend a lot of time searching/retrieving information? So if you or your employees spend a lot of time doing that, you need to seriously consider a RAG, for your business. Should the data stay inside the company's servers, or can it be processed by third parties like OpenAI and so on? Because if the data is not sensitive, then you can have ChatGPT, act as the brain, of your company. But when you have sensitive data, you have two options. Either you rent some cloud server services like AWS, and in this case, you will own, those servers, and the data will go back and forth between your company's servers and those servers. And if you have like extra sensitive data, and in this case, you need to buy your own hardware, your own servers, and host everything so that the data never leaves your company. Another important question is how many daily users, because at the end of the day, we need to retrieve data fast. And if too many users are using this system at the same time, maybe you will experience some lag, which basically will defeat the whole purpose of this system. So this is important to know in advance. What's the type of data to be processed? Is it recordings like audio files? Is it messy data like PDFs? Are these images or videos, and so on? Where is it currently stored? Because this will inform the AI agency about the technical complexity, if we need to integrate with Microsoft Azure or AWS, and so on. Is this knowledge base being continuously updated or not? Because if it is updated on a regularly basis, we need to build a system that is ready to ingest new data continuously. Also, who is responsible for keeping the data accurate and up to date? Because this person will be very important for the success of this project. If the data are mainly made of PDFs, do they contain tables or scanned images? Because this will increase the complexity of the project. If there are a lot of tables and images inside the PDFs, we need to basically assess the accuracy of the tools that are used to extract those tables from those PDFs. Also, do you use terminology or acronyms specific to your business? Because the AI needs to be aware about this terminology to be able to answer accurately. And finally, can some of your domain experts free up time to help build the evaluation dataset? Because at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we trust this AI RAG system. And whenever it gives us an answer, it is accurate and reliable. And the only way to do that is to build a very high quality evaluation dataset. And how do we do that? Is by asking domain experts to build this dataset so that we can test our RAG system against it and basically measure its accuracy. So that's what's pretty much it. I hope, guys, you liked it. If you're a business owner and you would like to know more about this subject and discuss it with me, feel free to book a Calendly link with me via the link in the description. Cheers, guys.